Welcome to college basketball coast to coast NCAA tournament first round Thursday, March Madness 2025. Had a little late night action. More on that as we continue with our show. Michigan and UC San Diego in a squeaker. But this is Matt Zemek. I'm with Ari Russell, being with you after midnight in the East. A lot to get to. We have a special guest coming up in just a little bit. But Ari, first off, the day began. It feels like forever ago. But Thursday afternoon, we had Creighton bringing the wood to the Louisville Sluggers. The Louisville Sluggers struck out, and Creighton versus Auburn. So, Ari, your thoughts on the Creighton performance, and then a little look ahead to that game against the number one seed, which is looking a little vulnerable in Auburn.
Creighton looked absolutely great today. I thought that they shot the ball very well, especially from the three-point line. Kalkbrenner, again, very disruptive as he is. I mean, he's not the three-time Big East Defensive Player of the Year for nothing. He does a lot of sweeping up any dirt that comes into the paint. That's what he does. They just had a complete game today. Defensively, really, disrupted Louisville's flow. Louisville didn't shoot the ball particularly well, even on their open shots. But I was very impressed today with Creighton. Really looked the part of a veteran team that is probably going to give Auburn some problems, I think. I don't think Auburn is going to just easily roll into the Sweet 16 because Creighton's got a lot of guys out there. Neal is a sensational player, and he's probably not getting a look for a first-round pick because he's too old at this point. I think he's a senior. So he's over the 21-year-old threshold, but he's a sensational player as well as Kalkbrenner. But they've got size up front that's going to be very difficult for Auburn to dominate the glass like they normally do. So and they are very good. Creighton is at shooting the three and also getting into the lane. They're a very balanced team on both sides of the ball. So impressive win by Creighton. Probably one of the more impressive wins early. Today. It was that game. I thought Creighton really played well, and it's going to be an interesting matchup against Auburn on Saturday. Like I said, it could be one of those major disruptors in the brackets here. Creighton could be one of those teams this year. We'll see.
To me, Ari, the key on Saturday in Rupp Arena, Creighton Auburn, Tahad Pettiford, because this is a freshman. And he gave Auburn a lot of juice early in the season, but it could be that he's hitting that freshman wall for the Tigers. Your thoughts on just any player you're going to have your eye on in that Creighton-Auburn matchup before we get to our special guest here on College Basketball Coast to Coast?
I mean, Neal, that's on that matchup. Neal is going to be the guy, like I mentioned earlier. I saw him in the Big East tournament, and I'm like, this guy's a pro. I mean, he's about 6'5", 6'6", a really athletic guard, a wing that can get to the hoop, but also has a very beautiful high-arcing three-point shot as well. So, but he also can post up. So he's the guy I think is going to be the key for Creighton. If they are going to pull the upset, it's going to have to be Neal having a big game and being a big problem for Auburn to figure out.
All right. I believe we're ready for our special guest, or at least in just a moment. All right. Here we go.
Yep.
Magic of technology, kids. How are things?
Quite a lot of basketball to talk about.
No doubt. Look, it's your party. I'm just visiting. I will say this: what a day! We finally saw some fairly close games, including that Michigan UC San Diego finish, and a couple of other wild upsets with Drake knocking off Missouri. And guys, we got another special guest, our buddy Jack Benjamin, who is a play-by-play guy with ESPN Plus, and CBS Sports Network. Jack knows all about the McNeese Cowboys and the Southland Conference because he worked the game on regional national radio for McNeese's Southland Conference win. So what they did to Clemson is not a big surprise to Jack because he saw him in person. So he's with us on College Basketball Coast to Coast. Hello, Jack. You're on with Matt Zemek and with Ari Russell and with me, TJ Rives. Good to have you here with us on what has been a long first Thursday of the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, Matt and Ari, good to officially meet you guys. TJ, I appreciate you guys all having me on. Good to chat with you again. Yeah, I'll tell you what, it didn't feel officially like March Madness until McNeese pulled that stunner off, right? A couple of those, early games that we were sort of wondering about, early on. Hey, when's this thing going to get going? And yeah, McNeese did what frankly they had to do in order to win that game, which is, force turnovers and force a lot of bad shots from Clemson and use their athleticism to out-tough them. And sure enough, here they are in the round of 32 getting set for Purdue.
Hey, along those lines, one thing, and I thought Steve Lapis was right on it, the analyst for CBS. He said McNeese is quicker to the ball. McNeese is taking him off the dribble, and Clemson's not ready for it. Clemson doesn't look awake. What did you perceive, Jack, in terms of McNeese being ready and Clemson appearing to not be ready?
Yeah, I'll say this. First of all, with regards to McNeese, oftentimes you have a low or mid-major, and they're in the tournament like McNeese is for, this is a second straight year for them now. A lot of these teams are in there for the first time or the first time in a while. Will Wade has been there and done it as a coach. He has a group that, yes, granted, they have a bunch of guys who are key transfers. I'm sure you guys all got very familiar with the name Brandon Murray today. Guy's been at 4 schools in 4 years. He was with Will Wade at LSU and then bounced around to Georgetown and Ole Miss before coming back to Will Wade. But there are a number of guys on this team. Christian Shoemate's been in the program for 4 years. He's been with Will Wade a couple of years. DJ Richards was there last year. There are a number of these guys who have kind of been there through and went through that loss to Gonzaga last year. So to your point with the hustle plays, the 50-50 balls, the environment not phasing these guys, I think the experience of going through it a year ago was gigantic for the program and for Will Wade, especially to kind of let the guys know what to expect. And from the perspective of them coming in and frankly, I mean, that first half, I don't know how that even me as someone who thought McNeese could win that game, 31-13 at halftime. I think McNeese out-rebounded them by something like 12 or 13 in the first half. They out-rebounded them by 7 for the game. They're plus 20 in the paint. A lot of that is, I mean, that's a Clemson team coming off an Elite Eight appearance with an experienced coach and a lot of experienced guys. I didn't see that coming whatsoever. I saw this as, this backdoored into a one-possession game. This was just McNeese and their scrappiness and their toughness, and there's a reason why this team has won 12 in a row. They've won 23 of 24. They've lost one since mid-December, and if you look at their resume, they've played now 3 power conference teams. They went to Tuscaloosa, lost to number 2 Alabama early on in the year by 8. They played Mississippi State, who obviously we're going to see them tomorrow against Baylor, lost them by 3. And now they've got the win against the win the NCAA tournament against Clemson, and now Purdue's next. So, right now, sky's the limit for these guys.
Love Jack's insight. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, Jack, like McNeese looked like they were on pogo sticks, like they were just jumping through the roof, and Clemson's feet were in wet cement. Like just the jumping, the bounciness, the springiness. It was such an amazing contrast. And I think the interesting question to put to you, Jack, is, was McNeese State holding something in reserve during the regular season? Like, was this the effort level every night? Or was did McNeese take it to another level? Because obviously this was a big moment, very exciting. But over the 30-game season, you can't really bring the same effort every night. How did Will Wade get this team to kind of manage its energy? Was this representative of what we've seen consistently, or did today take it to a whole nother level?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think. I would say I'd be lying if I said that their effort level was to this degree on every single game over the course of the year. You play a game, Matt, and you're, some of these gyms in the Southland Conference, if you guys aren't familiar, you go to Houston Christian. It used to be Houston Baptist. They changed their name. Their gym seats about maybe 300 people on a good day. There's not a lot of people there. It's a small environment. A lot of these gyms in the Southland are like that. it's hard to get up for a game like that the way you get up for an NCAA tournament game like Clemson. With that said, this is a program that is now 40-2 against Southland Conference teams over the last 2 years. I mentioned what they've done against Power Conference teams over the last few years. The effort level, is it this consistent on a nightly basis for Will Wade and his team? No. Do they, in terms of saving something in reserve, I will say this, the one thing that I saw right out the gate, the 2-3 zone, that's a little wrinkle they threw in there that I can tell you in calling them during the regular year and seeing them over the course of the Southland Conference tournament, this is a man-to-man team against Southland Conference opponents because size-wise, you're equal. I mean, you're equivalent. You can't go to town one-on-one with a guy and whatever. And obviously, when it comes to you're guarding a 7-footer like Locken, and obviously he was in foul trouble the entire time. They basically said, "Look, we're going to live with Clemson hoisting up threes, and if you make them, fine, tip your cap, and we're going to out hustle you to every single loose ball while playing our area in the zone for the most part, and then we're going to pressure the heck out of you and force you to be uncomfortable." And sure enough, what they have been able to do all season long, and I would say what they've been able to do for the most part, Matt, for 2 years, their effort level defensively has been consistent for the last couple seasons. I can't say that offensively they've been as attack-minded and get downhill and the way that they've approached that side, that they've been that consistent offensively. But defensively, it's been there. You look at their metrics, you look at what they've done against power conference teams these 2 seasons under Will Wade. That it's what they do. They force turnovers, and a Clemson team that does not turn the ball over a ton and has disciplined veteran guards. They got loose, and I think missing 3-pointers do that to you in part, and I think the athleticism will do that to you too. And that's I mean, frankly, it didn't shock me what they were able to kind of put forth, but yeah, this is the type of effort you can expect to see out of a Will Wade coached McNeese team.
Great stuff here. Jack Benjamin with us for a few more minutes. We don't want to just limit you to this today. Do you have any thoughts on something else that struck you? I mean, there's a buffet. We have 15 of the 16 games complete as we do this live right now. Matt, Ari, and Jack. Texas Tech leading North Carolina Wilmington, UNCW, late in the game with about 4 minutes left as we do this live. 68-62. Texas Tech had a big double-digit lead, and Wilmington had a great run at the end of the first half and the beginning of the second half to make this interesting. So the last game of the night may be a doozy here if Texas Tech can't put it away. 15 other games in the books. Jack, while we have you here, do you have something else, maybe a couple of somethings that struck you?
Yeah, I don't know where to start, TJ. I've got a bunch of them for you, and I know you and I were texting earlier. I know you guys have probably been talking throughout about watching UNCW just kind of creep up on Texas Tech, and sure enough, they've had the lead for a bulk of the second half. A Takeo Siddle coach team. This is just kind of what they do. I've been fortunate enough to call some CAA games for CBS Sports Network, and that league, I'll tell you what, Towson obviously got upset in the conference tournament. There are a lot of a Charleston team that's now coached by Chris Mack. There are a lot of really good teams in that conference. I don't think people appreciate some of these conferences and leagues and how good they are. I think, when you're talking about overall takeaways from today, I'll start with Drake. I think they were, they maybe got, I'm not going to say swept under the rug, but Drake in a way, because there was so much going on, and obviously what McNeese did early on in the day after kind of a quiet round of games. I think people, if you didn't know the name Bennett Sturtz, you better know it now. I mean, this guy is out there. They're literally face guarding him the entire time. And this is what I love about, a really good mid-major coach. Ben McCollum, who those of you who aren't familiar with him, entering the year, just look at what he did at Northwest Missouri State. I mean, the guy just wins and wins and wins. And as much as I respect Dennis Gates and what he's able to do, that felt at times like a coaching mismatch. And you don't expect, a lower mid-major coach to go in there and kind of, in a sense, run circles around a power conference coach. But it was basically 5-on-4 basketball at times, and they couldn't solve it. And that's what a really good point guard can do for you. And that's what a really good coach can do for you. And I'll tell you what, Drake, I mean, I give them a good chance in the next round as well. I look at obviously the Michigan UC San Diego game that just finished up. Me being a little bit partial towards Michigan, having some family who graduated from there. I was watching that one closely, and yeah, it's sort of what you expect. What are you up to with Michigan now? 14 one-possession games, expanding their Big Ten record. It's just kind of what they do. It felt like they seem like the kind of team, and I'll end with this. You look at some of these teams, like what might their toughest game be? Michigan's the kind of team where if you can sneak by that opening game, which they somehow did, then they get out of there with a close win over a really good mid-major. Now you play a good Texas A&M team, but you now you're fighting at your weight in a sense now, and that's kind of where Dusty May thrives. He's been the underdog, he's now been the hunted, and I think that he's got this team in a spot where they potentially, now that they got through that opening kind of hiccup, took some adversity early, can they find a way to not turn the ball over, and can they maybe make a little bit of a run over the course of that South region? That'll be interesting to watch. So I think those are kind of my general takeaways for the most part on what was a great day one, and I expect a really great day two of the tournament tomorrow.
Ari Russell, I don't want to neglect you sitting here. Do you want to make a comment about the Drake win or the Michigan win tonight?
Yeah.
What you've seen there?
Sure. Yeah. With Drake, I mean, again, I think I watched them earlier in the Charleston tournament, and they drilled my Miami Hurricanes. And I'm
sorry to hear that.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Don't even get me started. So, but I saw them early in the season, and I know where he came from because I remember watching the championship game of Northwest Missouri State last year, and I'm like, oh, these guys are way above everybody else. Then now he's like, oh, he's the coach of Drake. Okay. He's got 4 of his starters that are on from that team onto this team as well. And these guys have played a lot of minutes together, whether it's at Drake or in the previous stop, and even at the other level. That's a lot of college basketball competitive play at a very high level. And they just play, you could tell just how they break the press. It's just very smooth. Sturtz is just calm. Like you see him, he has this calm demeanor about him, and he kind of plays at like a speed you just don't expect him to have it, and he can just make a cut here or there. And the basketball IQ collectively on this team is as high as anyone else in the country at this point. And the athleticism there is too, especially in the front line. They got guys that can leap out the building, and just because they're a mid-major, and Missouri Valley has caused a lot of problems in the tournament before, and Drake is significantly a team that I think can get to the second weekend, and they're going to be an interesting matchup, in the second round. So, and I don't think anyone wants to play them. And today Missouri had a good year, but they kind of fell off at the end of the year. And Drake was able to win the regular season and then get through the gauntlet of that Missouri Valley tournament, which we were all hoping for, so we can see this Drake team play. And they kind of showed us exactly what we were expecting. At least some of us have been paying attention. I wasn't shocked. I picked them to win this game, and they won it relatively handily.
Yeah, they were impressive.
Missouri made a run. Yeah.
No doubt. Jack, I know you got to run here in a second, and it's late in the East for all of us. Matt is actually in Arizona it's still prime time for him.
He's in the best time.
He's in the best time zone, right out in the West. This is easier doings than with us. By the way, Texas Tech does maintain the 5-point 69-64 lead with about 4 minutes left on UNC Wilmington. That is the 16th of 16 games that's still going on. Jack, just say something one more time about McNeese and Purdue in the Saturday matchup. What kind of chance do you give them? Will wait the extra day to prepare. Purdue has repeatedly been vulnerable in these kind of settings. What kind of chance do you give them, Jack?
Yeah, let me add this too. By the way, with Ari, everything you just said, I'm with you on that. Also, like TJ, to follow up on the point about McNeese, I think a big reason why Will Wade and his group did what they did today is experience. It's hard to replace. You can't teach. Age. It doesn't grow on trees. McNeese, I think, by KenPom is a top 30 most experienced team in the country. So that's part of kind of what goes in line with Drake. Now, the Division I experience isn't there with Drake as much as it is with McNeese, but that's something in line with it too. Yeah, TJ, I would say when you're looking at Purdue, obviously the front line, it's the same kind of question entering the Clemson game that it is entering Purdue. Now you're going up against size with Kaufman, Wren, and the big guys. Now you don't have to face Zach Edey, thankfully. It's not a year ago. At the same time, I guess number one, Matt Painter, that he's going to have his team ready offensively where they are going to be disciplined. They're not going to be phased by a 2-3 zone. They're not going to be phased by traps. I would be stunned if they are giving the ball away as carelessly as Clemson did today. I give McNeese a shot if they get their big guns going. And this is what I say by that. Everybody looks at the score today, and I'm guessing that people who have not watched McNeese this year will say, wow, McNeese won that game by 2 against Clemson. First NCAA tournament win in school history, First time they've ever beaten a top 25 opponent, period, in school history. Clemson was AP number 12, I think, in the poll entering the tournament. Javon Garcia is the Southland Conference Player of the Year. If you look at a box score of what Javon Garcia did today, people entering this game would probably say, oh, he must have dropped 20. He had 3 points and 0 for 6 shooting. DJ Richards is a top 10 3-point shooter in the country. He was 0 for 7 from 3 today and had 2 points. Those two guys, if you get your big guns going, your guys who can be streaky, who can be hot, if those guys can get going and you keep – I'm not going to say that they can force the level turnovers. I'm not going to say Purdue goes 1 for a million from 3 in the first half, but can you get your big guns going and can you give the same level of effort and toughness? I think then they can match up and absolutely push Purdue and give Purdue as much as they could possibly want, because McNeese, as you saw today, they've got the athletes and they've certainly got a coach who knows how to win the NCAA tournament.
Love it. We'll excuse Jack here because I got to tell you, Jack has been a trooper because he was part of Mike Grace's Press Box Radio morning show, 5-day-a-week morning show based out of Atlanta all through the Southeast. And that seems like it was 2 days ago, but it was earlier this morning. So Jack is like bookend doing a couple of things that I helped set up, including being with us on college basketball coast to coast. You get the Trooper Award, and I promise we'll come back to you a little later in the tournament for your insight and expertise. Jack, you did a great job. Thank you. Thank you for the extra effort, hanging with us here and giving us insight on the McNeese Cowboys out of Louisiana. Will Wade is not the NC State coach as of tonight. He may be in a few days, but he's busy on Saturday, right, Jack? One more time. He's still playing against Purdue.
I think the language is it's been agreed upon. He has not. And by the way, this was made very. If you guys can look up any college basketball insider in America, he has not signed the contract. That is made very clear. So TJ, I'll tell you what, man. Whatever the rate was of his salary entering today at NC State. I think the bidding price just went up a little bit, considering he just delivered the first NCAA tournament win in the history of McNeese basketball. And yeah, I'll tell you what, they're going nuts in Lake Charles. How about a Mir or a Khan, guys? Huh? The viral manager doing his thing, and tell you what, they're getting quite the show in Providence. I'll tell you that.
A lot of fun as a possible Cinderella. Jack, thank you, brother. Have a good night.
You bet, TJ. Matt, Ari, great to see you guys. Anytime you guys need me, let me know. Always happy to talk hoops. Enjoy the madness.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for coming on.
You bet.
Love him being with us. All right, so I'm going to be on the verge of turning this over to you guys here in a couple of moments. We got to segue in to what has happened tonight in Providence with Arkansas knocking out the Kansas Jayhawks. And as is there on the screen, did Kansas really melt it down? Did Arkansas take it from them? And we now know St. John's, as expected, is the opponent. So this is St. John's against Arkansas, Rick Pitino's team against John Calipari's team. Ari, you covered St. John's all the way through the Big East tournament win. They had a trouble at the beginning of the game with Omaha, but they turned it on. And then at halftime, only a 5-point game, but turned it on in the second half. And now we know it is Arkansas. Ari and Matt. So, let's tee that up around the room real quick. Ari, a thought?
Yeah, I mean, first off, Arkansas was able to adjust to the adjustment Kansas made today by going to zone, because Arkansas went on a run and then Self actually started a zone that really disrupted Arkansas offensively. But Kansas just wasn't able to execute down the stretch. I mean, what Hunter Dickinson, sorry. It just hasn't worked out for him, and for Kansas, he just didn't really deliver what they had expected him coming in out the transfer portal, 2 years ago. It just didn't happen. Harris has been there since the Ford administration, so I know he was probably disgusted by today, but Arkansas getting Boogie Flan back, and he played 25 minutes and down the stretch, especially defensively. On the flip side, they're going to be playing St. John's. Now, don't look at what happens in the first half ever again with St. John's, because it's irrelevant. Because basically they're scouting and they're trying to figure out how to they're like, I feel like they troll teams to get them to feel comfortable in a certain way. And then they just wipe you out in the second half. And they've been doing that all year long. And they did that again tonight against Omaha, which you're like, oh, 5-point lead. Oh, and then they just completely decimated them. And it was just impressive once again. Like they were doing things where they were blocking shots, and like I think Aaron Scott blocked 2 shots. He didn't even jump because they thought that he was going to jump and did a pump fake and then went it, and he didn't jump both times, and he blocked the 2 shots without leaving his feet. It's just, again, it's Omaha, but just to kind of show you what they were doing, and then they just ran him out the building. So, Arkansas can build themselves a nice first half lead. It could be even double digits, but they better come prepared in the second half because they turn it to 11, man. St. John's every second half, and it's just the different ball team that you're facing.
Hey, Matt Zemek, thoughts on both? Is it more of an Arkansas win or another Kansas meltdown? And now St. John's is the opponent. Matt, what do you think?
Kansas, 6 turnovers in the final 4.5 minutes. That was a melt. That was a tuna melt with fries. It was 54-44 Arkansas, and then Bill Self throws the zone at Calipari. We've seen Calipari teams struggle with the zone before many times, and Kansas surges into the lead 67-64 with the ball, and you think, oh, this train's pulling away from the station, and then Kansas just throws the ball all over the yard late, and those passes, like, it wasn't even a set up easy layups or anything. They were passes at the top of the key, 30 feet from the basket. There was just no point to throwing those passes. They weren't serving any higher purpose. And just that underscores the story of the season for Kansas. And this game reminded me of the 6-point lead over Houston with under 20 seconds left. And they threw that game away. Just the carelessness in end of game moments in that game against Houston. And I remember us talking about it a lot here on College Basketball Coast to Coast on our Saturday show in the middle of the season. Kansas never recovered from that. Like, that seemed to be the dagger. If Kansas pulls through that game and wins, that team might have that familiar Bill Self confidence, that winning edge. That seemed to take the life out of that team. Just the air out of the balloon, sapped their confidence. They never really recovered from that moment. And tonight really was kind of just a fitting end because it recalled that particular memory. About Arkansas St. John's. Now, what Ari said is 1,000% correct. That having been said, one of these days, St. John's is going to be down 12 at halftime, and the shots aren't going to fall in the second half, or a player's going to get in foul trouble. I would highly recommend to the Johnies at least be like even at halftime. You are not contractually obligated to fall behind by 10 to 12 points. So you might not want to chance it. And if that happens against Florida, well, you're in for a rough ride. So St. John's needs to get that fixed a little bit. Can't keep doing that forever. But it is so impressive how just the tsunami keeps coming. I know Ari, is well versed in Georgetown history. He remembers 1984 in the Kingdome, just the Hoyas absolutely swamping an elite Kentucky team in the Kingdome in the second half. But that was one moment in time. You can't expect to do that with machine-like regularity. St. John's is going to have to be a little more consistent in the first 20 minutes of a game.
All right, I'm going to depart and leave it with you guys in a couple of moments. Again, a lot of the chalk at the top. Auburn, Houston as 1 seeds, victorious. St. John's as a 2 seed, also victorious. I'm going to probably leave somebody else out. Tennessee is a 2 seed, able to win. So now it makes you wonder. All right, so we're going to see Duke on Friday as a 1 seed, Florida on Friday as a 1 seed, and Michigan State is the other 2 seed, along with Alabama that we will see. So far, the teams up at the very, very top have survived. Notice I used the 2 words "so far," guys. Stay tuned. Stay tuned for what might or might not happen on Friday in that regard. I'll tee you guys up in this regard. How strong did Gonzaga look? I mean, I was sending you guys messages and putting it on social media. How much of that was Gonzaga being great? How much of it was a total no-show by Georgia, as Gonzaga literally led the game 27-3? 27-3 in the first half, making three-pointers that they didn't make in the West Coast Conference Final with St. Mary's, where they made one. And now it's Gonzaga and Houston. Any thoughts on the Gonzaga performance? And then now it's Houston in the next round. Any thoughts there, Ari?
Yeah, I mean, they just blitzkrieged Georgia today. I mean, just flattened them. Very impressive win. I think I had Georgia in that one. I was a coin flip, like most 8-9 games. Interesting, the 2 8-9 games were pretty much blowouts. So that I find interesting. Neither of them were close. Gonzaga just really blew the doors off of them, but that's where I think it's going to end for them, because Houston is determined this year. I mean, they just took care of business. I think obviously Mark Few can get his team prepared, and Gonzaga could go back to being that Cinderella they were back in, what was it, the Cavalieri days. This is in the earlier mid 90s when I think who was their coach back even before Few. They were
Dan
Munson.
Dan Fitzgerald.
No,
Dan
Munson.
Fitzgerald, and then Dan Munson briefly before Few.
Yeah,
Fitzgerald, Ben Munson. Yes.
Yeah, Munson before going to Minnesota, right? So, this could be a moment for them, but there's just something with Houston, again, the experience, and I think it's just there's too much talent, and they're just too good and too disciplined to really. I think Gonzaga could give them some problems, and they play as well as they played today. I think it should be a much closer game, I just don't think they're going to have enough. Or Georgia is definitely not at the level of Houston.
Houston old school, Matt Zemek on guarding you. Jawan Roberts, who'd had the ankle injury in the Big 12 tournament. They won the tournament without him, including the championship game without him. He played some, was somewhat effective in the game. Again, a bad opponent. SIU Edwardsville wasn't going to be much of a threat. But, I mean, this is going to be fascinating here in the matchup with the 1 versus the 9. Matt, do you have a quick thought on that here on College Basketball Coast to Coast as we do this live?
Well, this is the magic of the 8 or 9 seed against the 1s. The 8. If you're an 8 seed, sometimes you're kind of like a scrappy overachiever. But in this case, Gonzaga fits the profile of a team that was supposed to be big time. It didn't come together, but you can see the talent and you can see what it looks like when everything does function well. And so now that underachieving 8 seed just gets to put all its chips in the middle of the table and give that 1 seed everything. Like, that is the usual plot point for the 8 versus the 1 in the second round. And so, like, you can just feel the Zags. They're going to give it their all. Mark Few going for his 10th straight Sweet 16.
Wow.
Dean Smith from 81 through 93, he made 13 straight. So Mark Few trying to get to 10, chasing a little piece of college basketball history here. This is the game in the second round. Creighton Auburn could be really, really interesting. Maybe we get UConn Florida on Sunday. That would be pretty sexy. But to me, this is the game to watch in the second round.
And by the way, Texas Tech has finished off UNC Wilmington in the 16th of the 16 games tonight by 10. So they will now play Drake coming on Saturday. I am going to depart here in just a second or two because we have to reload for Friday. I'll pass the baton solely to you guys to take it the rest of the way here. Why do I get the feeling we did see a couple of upsets with McNeese and with Drake? Other than that, it's mainly chalk, unless I'm missing something, right? It's mainly the favorites. You know what that means, Ari and Matt? Look out for Friday. Look out for whatever's going to happen Friday, because we might see buzzer beaters and 3 or 4 teams with like a 12, a 13, a 14 or better in front of their name that do something. That's just a hunch I have. You buy my hunch before I go bye-bye and milk and cookies time?
No, I do. Yeah, I mean, that's usually what it is. One of the days tends to not be balanced out. You don't know which one it's going to be, so we already know it's not going to be today because, there wasn't really any buzzer beaters or anything, McNeese obviously being the big one. I don't consider 11-6 even any more upset city like normal. But I think tomorrow or later today,
right?
Technically, I think that we can see something is going to blow up most of the brackets today. I think most of them are. I think, it's probably one of the first days that I still have my Final Four. After 4:00 on Thursday. So I'm happy. I picked some. I picked Yale to beat Texas A&M. That ain't
right.
So and I think I was dumb enough to pick High Point over Purdue, even though they were.
I had High Point as well.
Yeah.
They could not take advantage of a game that was right there. Credit Purdue.
Yeah.
But McNeese might be able to do that. Again, I'm going to leave you with this. A lot of people are pointing at my Memphis Tigers, the American Conference champs. At Zemek, don't start. I'm cranky. It's almost 1 a.m. in the East. About Colorado State and Memphis. Is that maybe an upset? Is it Akron and Arizona? Some people have Arizona going a long way. Maybe Akron out of the Mid-America Conference, the MAC. Maybe they get them. Stay tuned on where a lot of people are looking at North Carolina, Ole Miss after North Carolina just won a game midweek as a potential upset. Stay tuned. Stay tuned for what could be happening on Friday. We'll see how my Tigers do Friday afternoon in Seattle. Boys, I'm going to leave it with you here for the remaining moments that you want to be here. Thursday night recap, Friday preview. Keep rocking here on the college basketball coast-to-coast platforms. We'll reload for 16 more games on Friday. All right, guys?
Thank you, TJ.
Yeah.
We'll see you guys later. Be well.
All righty. Okay, so Ari, as we wrap up here on college basketball coast to coast, two other stories I wanted to get to, and one is that this underachieving UCLA team was able to mow down Utah State, and it does set up an interesting second round game, Rupp Arena, Lexington, Kentucky on Saturday, UCLA against the Vols. And we could say that UCLA versus Utah State was just a case of the Mountain West coming up small again in the NCAA tournament, or we could say maybe UCLA found its groove and is now ready to mount a real challenge. Ari, where do you come down on that particular discussion and debate?
Disappointing showing for Utah State today. They just got blown off the map today. UCLA just took control of that game relatively early and didn't let go of it. And credit to Mick Cronin for I think they're 4-0 in the round of 64 under Mick Cronin at UCLA. So he does a pretty good job on the first day. Now the second day is where we'll see what it is, because this is a big time opponent he's going up against, and Rick Barnes is Tennessee. They played okay today against Wofford. I thought that was actually a little bit closer than I had anticipated it being. I mean, Tennessee led throughout and mostly through double digits, but it wasn't like huge. It wasn't in the 30s. It was, I think they won by like 15, 17. A lot less than I thought. The UCLA is going to present a lot of problems because of their size. They do have a lot of size. But I thought that their guard play was very good today, and they shot the ball nicely. But Tennessee is one of the better defensive, they have probably one of the better defensive backcourts, one of the best defensive players in the country. And they've got a lot of depth too, and they got a lot of guys that can score on you. And it's a much more dynamic team that UCLA is going to play. But, again, the Bruins were preseason highly touted or highly rated, and they didn't quite pan out. But they had some success in the Big Ten this year, but they were relatively mediocre. So, tournament time is one and done. So we'll see if Tennessee doesn't have a good day and UCLA is able to, use their size to their advantage and see what happens. But to me, I still think that Tennessee has a tremendous advantage in this one because UCLA ain't playing Utah State again.
Got that right. All right, I'm going to give you the floor in just a moment for other overview thoughts, either reviewing Thursday or previewing Friday. I'm going to give you the floor in just a bit. There's one more item I'd like you to address. You probably saw Kevin Willard's comments about Maryland not giving him, being penny pinchers, not allowing him to stay, the Maryland team to stay an extra night at the hotel, and lots of whispers and backroom chatter about Kevin Willard being pursued by Villanova as the next head coach of the Wildcats. And, amidst all this, Maryland athletic director Damon Evans reportedly going to SMU. And that's something that Kevin Willard wanted to leverage and make happen so that maybe he gets a more supportive AD at Maryland, but maybe he's out the door at Villanova. Like, this was the big soap opera off the court on Thursday, away from the actual action at the NCAA tournament. Your thoughts on Kevin Willard, his comments, Maryland, Villanova, what's going on, what you think is actually happening, what you think should happen, what you think will happen?
Well, I mean, obviously he's leveraging to try to get more support out of, the University of Maryland for their basketball program. Obviously not happy with how it's been set up recently, and which I totally get and respect, So I think he's trying to leverage what is, and they had a great year, Maryland. I think they probably had a much better year, not quite much better, but a little bit exceeded some of the expectations going into this year. Even then, they had the freshman of the year with Queen, who was a high recruit, but still, I mean, I think that Maryland probably did a little overachieve this year. So, I think he has a right to try to press for more compensation and support for the program. He didn't feel that he was getting the support. Now, he did throw a lot of shade about kind of like, well, maybe that's the case, as you said, because and kind of like almost I feel like broke the story that the AD was moving to SMU, which is quite odd. But he's definitely leveraging, and he's going to be letting. So you should, in that position, and obviously he's going to be a hot commodity. Obviously, quite familiar with the conference that Villanova's in, as we all know. Villanova's going to have a good amount of money, so now he's going to have that option now to see if Maryland can retain him and also get the support he needs, or Villanova's going to up it for him to move up to the suburbs of Philadelphia. So, so it'll be an interesting thing. But that was I thought was quite an interesting kind of setup that happened today, and I think he said most of it in the kind of press conferences that they had today. Usually, the day before, after the teams practice at the arenas that they're playing. So, for Maryland, I would want to say they should try to keep him as much as possible, because it's going to be hard to replace a guy like Kevin Willard. And now he's kind of exposed that, hey, maybe they're not supporting the program as well as they should. And, so again, a lot of leveraging, a lot of kind of politicking, as they say, by Willard in the press today. And, his agent probably is right there telling him and scripting him out to say these things, to use the public forum for that leverage for his position. And also his team is going to be like, hey, like he's fighting. He wants us to have more, resources, which is interesting because Maryland isn't known as being a poverty program by any stretch, so it's interesting that he's not quite happy or feels that they can compete even at the next level. And I think that's something that Maryland should look into, because he's trying to get them back to where they were under Gary Williams. But it's a different landscape than it was under Gary Williams.
All right, Ari, thanks for those answers. Now, in return, in gratitude for those answers, I give you the floor for your either soapbox moment or just your analysis of Thursday. Maybe you have your eye on a Friday game or a Saturday game, anything on the board at the NCAA tournament, or anything else in the world of college basketball you'd like to talk about. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Just going down the list here a little bit. Wisconsin quite impressive. Montana, was keeping it tight a little bit in the first half, but Wisconsin definitely pulled away in the second half, and you got to give them a lot of credit for that, because that could have been one of those trap games. And Montana was hitting some threes early on, but Wisconsin figured out how to defend it better and did a great job on the glass. That's one game. Another game that I thought was impressive, and a team that we should really be looking out for, is BYU. VCU is one of the better defensive teams in the country, and I tell you what, BYU they've got some guys, man. They are a legitimate team. They might be a little bit underseeded. They had a great end of the year. The last 6 weeks or so, I think there was not too many teams playing as good as BYU was. They just happened to run into Houston a few times, and Houston is probably one of the best playing teams right now, the hottest teams that we have out here. So, but I was impressed with BYU. I think they're a force to be reckoned with. Tomorrow it's tough to really kind of look ahead at tomorrow. First game again, another 8-9 game, Baylor, Mississippi State. That's an intriguing one. Again, these are coin flips that you try to pick who the winner is going to be, flip the coin, but then it doesn't matter because it usually lands on its side, and then getting it wrong. So I think I had Creighton winning, but not by that much against Louisville. Again, so are we going to get a closer 8-9 game? Because we didn't get those today. I don't expect Alabama to really have money problems with Bob Morris there. Iowa State Lipscomb is going to be interesting just because of the health of Iowa State. I don't know where that's a big deal in my opinion. Colorado, Memphis, obviously a lot of people, including yourself, are picking the Rams to take down the Tigers, much to our good old buddy TJ chagrin. I think Memphis pulls that one out despite Penny Hardaway's in-game coaching snafus he has from time to time.
Well, no Tyrese Hunter for Memphis. That's the concern.
That's a big deal.
That's why Colorado State is the trendy 12/5 pick.
Yep. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. I get that. I don't know. I kind of want to see Memphis actually win a first-round game for the first time in a life. I feel like they lose in the first round a lot. So it would be nice to see them move on. But Colorado State's been playing on a heater for a while now too. So they might be the most dangerous team out the Mountain West, the one that might end up only advancing. So I think New Mexico plays as well tomorrow or later today, technically. Duke and Mount St. Mary's, I think Duke should win that game by 40 easy. I saw the Mount St. Mary's American game, and neither of those teams look like Duke can fall asleep and beat them by 30. It's just the size and what have you. Vanderbilt St. Mary's, again, that's a coin flip. Those 10-7s are coin flips. I don't know who the heck. I think St. Mary's should probably pull that one off since they had a good year, but, you don't know. Ole Miss, North Carolina. Now, this is the fun one. This is a fun one. Which North Carolina team are we going to see? Because Ole Miss can lay it on you as well, and they that one is probably my most intriguing game because if North Carolina can win that game and they can move on, to the round of 32, what does that mean for the rest of the tournament with this team? This is a preseason top 15 team, right? Are they going to believe that they're a postseason top 15 or a Sweet 16 team? So that's one of the most intriguing games. Going back to Kevin Willard and Maryland, Grand Canyon, I don't think they have the team that they quite had last year. They're still really good and dangerous, obviously. But Maryland's, it'll be interesting how if any of this talk about him moving off to Villanova is a distraction or is a motivator. We saw with McNeese that Will Wade, it seemed to not matter, and maybe the players actually got there and are hyped about it. Hey, we got our coach the next level. Some of them might end up moving on to NC State with them if they still have eligibility left. So they might be excited to do that too. Florida, Norfolk State. Now, Norfolk State, they're probably one of the tougher 16 seeds, but I don't see Florida having a problem. Another intriguing game, and I think I picked this in one of the brackets I have, is Troy, Kentucky. Kentucky is fragile to me because they can beat anyone in the country at times, especially when they shoot the rock well, and they generally do. But Troy is also a very good offensive team as well. And we've seen Kentucky have problems defending, especially three-point shots. I mean, they give up a lot of points. And if this is one of those run-and-gun games, I think Troy can keep up with them. somewhat. So that's an intriguing one right there. I wouldn't be shocked if Kentucky falls to Troy. So that's one I would keep an eye on. Marquette, New Mexico, again, that's a 10-7 coin flip. I'm going to go with Marquette simply because of the experience that team has had, especially in the backcourt. A lot of time that they've spent in the NCAA tournament at this point. I just have a hard time seeing them lose to a team like that. Like New Mexico had a great year. I just have a hard time. You never know, but that's a lot of experience, and I think experience is going to push them to the next one. Akron, Arizona. I think Arizona really got themselves together much better towards the end of the year. Really, especially in the second half of the Big 12 conference play, kind of got themselves right. So, again, you never know. That can be one you look at, those 13-4s, but I expect Arizona to win. And then we got the 8-9 UConn, Oklahoma. So we'll see if Oklahoma belongs or not. I have UConn moving forward in that one simply just off the strength that it's been UConn, and I don't see them bowing out in the first round this year, but I think they're out in the second round. Whoever wins this game is getting served up, in my opinion. I don't think they're going to pose much of a challenge to Florida. We got Xavier at Illinois. Again, the 11-6 play-in team that won a great game against Texas. I think Xavier could be a great story. Another one of those things. Could they get into the Sweet 16 again? There's something like if Illinois can get past this point, they're a very dangerous team. Because they've shown us they can beat anybody, right? So that one should be fun. We got Michigan State Bryant. I expect Michigan State to roll in that one. And then we close out the day with Liberty and Oregon. Well, if the Oregon shows up that we saw in late February and early March, I think they should win that game as well against Liberty. But let's see. Don't take my words for it. I'll lose you all the money in the world.
All right, that's the Friday docket from Ari Russell. Ari, thanks for staying up late here with us on college basketball coast to coast. And so just to set the table, we're going to be coming at you with nightly shows Friday, Saturday, Sunday after each of these NCAA tournament nights. It's going to be different faces on each of these nights, most likely, but there will be a college basketball coast to coast show coming at you on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. So watch this space and be on social media for college basketball coast to coast, continuing coverage of the 2025 NCAA tournament. For Ari Russell, for TJ Rives, and for all of us here at College Basketball Coast to Coast, I'm Matt Zemek. Get some sleep. We start it all over again on First Round Friday.